Having observed sufficient evidence, I resolved to take action. My gut contorted into a knot, yet I managed to compose myself and approached the closet and retrieved a little suitcase and a larger suitcase. Swiftly and quietly extracted garments from the closet and packed them into the larger bag containing all of my belongings. It required around 1 minute to pack the suitcase. I approached the dresser and extracted all items, the undergarments, and discarded any items, incorporating undershirts into the smaller. I then transitioned to the sock drawer, successfully extracted 2 substantial, several handfuls of socks when I heard Janet. I apologize for disturbing you, Janet. Apologized for stuffing the socks into the. I will depart in a few minutes with my suitcase. And you may resume, allowing Steve. As you vividly depicted. It is not as it appears, Tom. Steve is involved. He is merely a friend. He will depart shortly. We now need to discuss, dear, a suggestion. Janet became extremely furious with Steve. It would be preferable for you to depart immediately. Steve seems to concur with my departure. The bedroom was a commendable concept. Nonetheless, his garments were absent. Strolling unclothed in the presence of an irate man is not typical among most males. Consider advantageous to their overall well-being is entirely contrary. Steve exercised sound judgment and retracted the sheet raised to his chin. I observed my former Ruger .22 caliber revolver in my desk drawer while extracting the final item, a little number of socks I had completely overlooked. I had placed it in their drawer. It has been some time since I lost all recollection. I recognize that I must lack. I have frequently worn certain of my socks, elevated my firearm, and oriented myself towards my spouse with whom I cohabited for 23 years. I approached the bed with her partner and positioned oneself at the edge adjacent to Janet's lap. While I sat there with the firearm in my hand, I recognized the existence of several expedient solutions to a somewhat perplexing. It appears that you and Janet are in a dilemma. Steve has been enjoying himself exuberantly. Could you specify which section I misunderstood required? Good heavens, Tom, have you been here for so long? I cannot refute what you have observed or I have heard, but that does not imply my affection for you. It was really a trivial affair, Tom. It held no significance for me, Janet. Yet, it appears to me, Steve, that you ought to be somewhat unsettled by my. It appears to be the most recent declaration from a devoted spouse. We both hold significant importance to Janet, and our capabilities beneath the sheets remain much to improve upon. Perhaps she possesses another individual that possesses superior circumstances than you. We are merely substitutes to be authorized only when she is unable to locate a genuine stud, Tom. Do not assert that you are my sole affection and the finest lover globally. Please include. Lower the firearm and release Steve. We are capable of proceeding converse on this among us. There is no necessity to involve Steve in our private matters. Janet engaged in reasoning throughout chats. I believe there is a compelling rationale for you. Steve and another individual share a close relationship. You do not require my sexually charged presence, lingering and meddling with your intense sexual encounter. Janet was already weeping. Steve was breathing heavily and writhing in discomfort. I placed the firearm beside Janet. I rose and briefly contemplated committing suicide with the revolver, but a .22 caliber may alone inflict harm on my, render me blind, or impose some other affliction. Non-lethal yet painful injury. I did not must hasten towards my demise. It was inevitable. A choice, albeit a relatively permanent one. I would never harm Janet, and what purpose would that serve? Was Steve to me? Nonetheless, Janet was an appealing woman, and may consistently discover an alternative partner when I had been acquiescing to Bubba's desires for. After 20 years, I recognized that the situation was not so urgent that I secured my second bag. I stood up to depart, straightening myself. With my back facing the bed and I heard the distinct sound of the occupants. I have consistently referred to dry fire as it is. Noise produced by a discharged cartridge casing. There's an unoccupied chamber that I consistently maintain. Cartridge in the vacant chamber. I even maintain the subsequent chamber unoccupied just for your purpose of being secure as that chamber is aligned with. The pin must be engaged when the bolt is cocked. Having not perceived the sound of the firearm while I was fastening the case, I was cocking. Understood that if the firearm was recocked, it thereafter activated, at which point I perceived the unique sound of the antique revolver, the trigger being retracted without any. Upon observing the bed, I hurried to the. I nearly succeeded in obtaining the entryway. I descended the stairs unharmed. Was required to turn left after exiting the. As I turned in the bedroom, I felt an impact. The pain in my forehead was significant. Between a powerful bite and a sudden impact. Naturally, I let go of the hammer. Blood was on the bag in my left hand, already cascading into my left eye when I glided my hand across my brow. I perceived increased blood and a contusion on my head. I go down the steps at a deliberate pace. Primarily from memory, I seldom succeeded in. I opened the front door while my hand was busy, soaked with blood, and there was no means by which I surveyed my surroundings. Desperately recognized that the baggage in my possession was only. I half closed my eyes, seized a sock, and scrubbed. I ran to my handle to turn it. I entered the vehicle and accelerated rapidly. Every few minutes, I retrieved another, extracted a sock from my luggage and utilized it to clean the blood from my eyes to enable vision. And drive being shot in the head was far less excruciating than the duration expended within the emergency department of the local facility. The inquiries at the hospital were incessant, encompassing the designation of the insurance organization to my prospective assailant in A. In essence, it ultimately reduced to the truth that the little lead projectile was effortlessly pulled from beneath my skin and several stitchhemoglobin was applied, which was straightforward. The cops were summoned because of the presence of. There was a shooting, and I had to deliver some unpleasant news. Information on my adverse emotional state. Returned home from work before dinner. Observe my wife, an accountant, in action. Horizontal mambo, I recounted how I acquired it. The fireman momentarily contemplated remaining in place. Limit in my small intellect, but ultimately placed the firearm on the bed and I attempted to depart from Mr. Moore, who shot you. The officer inquired whether you had indeed witnessed the. I did not observe the identity of the shooter. However, for you, officer, I have refined it. Reduced to 2 suspects, I responded. With sarcasm, you must continue. Do you believe your wife is present there? Mr. Moore is capable of shooting you. Persistently endeavor to ascertain that your spouse of 23 years has been cohabiting with your accountant. Subsequently, inquire if she is able to shoot you. You will abruptly comprehend your lack of understanding her identity or her capabilities to respond. Your inquiry is distinct. I reluctantly acknowledged the prospect that I remained in the emergency department and contemplated the reason. My head was sutured, and the hemorrhaging ceased. I observed that it had ceased long ago. The physician who conducted the procedure was presenting my chart to an individual in white attire. I suppose they were inquiring about my jacket. Even possessed a brain in my head. The officer retreated, and the physician. He approached me, and I found his demeanor unappealing. He requested a private conversation with me. Mr. Moore, I am exceedingly apprehensive regarding your. You informed me that recently you have been experiencing fatigue and occasionally. I implore you to remain here until we can conduct tests to ascertain the severity of your disease may change. Admission to the hospital today. Preserved your existence, apply butter to my behind and refer to me as a biscuit. I lament, for I am fortunate. Illegitimate fortune that my accountant engaged in an affair with. My wife is fortunate that I returned home early. Apprehended them. Fortunate that one of them shot me in. The condition of the head is progressing satisfactorily, doctor. Let us conclude this while I am in A. It turns out that the head wound never occurred. Significantly disturbed me due to A. In a couple of days, I was transparent like A__. Request for quadruple bypass surgery for Janet. Attempted to meet with me prior to the operation and during my recovery, I declined to. I observed her with both of my children. My son TJ took a leave of absence. Absence from his employment in Texas and traveled. Accompanied me during my recovery. Jillian, the daughter, attended a local institution. I attended university and was allowed to be I was an advocate. Unconscious individuals should never be taken to the hospital. In the absence of a trusted individual overseeing. 4. Janet's parents visited and spent time. During my time with them, I was overwhelmed with counsel. Everyone believed I should confer with. Janet and I will deliberate on the matter as it stands, was diplomatically referred to as I maintained. After several days, I ultimately acquiesced. Concurred under the stipulation that our children and Janet's parents are present. Want universal comprehension of and missional. And the location from which the children returned me. The hospital where Janet and her parents convened. We were in the living room. It was the last occasion I encountered Janet after that tragedy. On that day, she resembled that truth. I felt a sense of satisfaction as I took a seat. The children are positioned on the couch. Janet sat in the chair beside me. Opposite me sat her parents. Janet came from the love seat to my left. The dance with several individuals whom I perceived as extremely frivolous inquiries. Tom, how could you propose to the police that I may have been the individual who discharged the firearm? I would never harm you, dear. Should be aware that having cohabited with me, she revealed that she has loved you all these years. Why did you not permit me to visit you? I should be the one at the hospital to support you in reclaiming your health. Allow me to address those inquiries, Father. Jillian accused her mother of betrayal. Father, in the conjugal bed, he never believed you could treat him in that manner when he understood your capabilities and desires regarding Father. Recognized he was unaware of your identity. Able to and informed the police you would have exacerbated his stress if you had previously been permitted to see him prior to truly allowing the procedure. He requires affection and support. Comprehension does not equate to dishonesty. My wife and I were surprised that my daughter comprehended my reasoning. Why was Janet unaware of all this? Without posing irrelevant inquiries, Jillian. I remain your mother, and I disapprove. Why are you addressing me in that manner, Janet? Objected that you ought to have considered prior to dedicating oneself to this. The man reprimanded Janet's mother, stating that she has not done something. You gained your daughter's respect. It is a dreadful matter, so do not pretend otherwise. Janet was astonished by the severe reprimand. When her mother essentially erupted at, she likely expressed herself with her words. Anticipated her parents to be supportive or minimum. I made a significant error. It occurred only once, and Tom apprehended me. I feel ashamed and embarrassed by my engaging in acts does not imply a lack of involvement. I do not love Tom wholeheartedly. Janet. I admitted to committing a grave mistake. I seek to atone for my transgressions. Mother serves as a form of revival for our family, faith in which one stands before. Acknowledge your transgressions. Afterwards, you might receive forgiveness, TJ inquired. Your father might baptize you and cleanse your. Are your crimes and memories interconnected? I believe it is intended to function for everyone. Seems to seize upon Janet, and I appreciated it. A significant number of her parents and children were subjecting her to considerable torment. I devoted the majority of my thoughts to retaliation against it. What more effective method to? She accomplishes this by focusing on her closest associates. Blood. Relatives, no. Janet exclaimed, I lack a definitive solution, yet I possess knowledge. Your father is a remarkable, gentle, and affectionate individual. As a husband and father, I merely want that my unconditional regret and my affection for him is. Owing to a need, I require his presence. Believe he requires. I talked for the first time, my dear. And the sarcasm emanated from my tongue. Do you now belong to Steve? I would not desire you to act as an Indian giver or whoever is superior in that regard. The man seized the spoils of victory. I confess, it was merely pillow. No one possesses ownership over me or any portion of my body, however. Darling, Janet responded, I am willing to provide you with all that I possess and all that I am, if you would pardon. Explain to me why I should trust that you did not intend that. I opposed what you said to Steve. I believe you were genuine when you referred to me as a deceiving and betraying. Tom, what do you desire now? Alterations you are attempting to implement. Compel me to disclose the truth. Janet reasoned that you are contradicting yourself. Am I a liar, or am I speaking the truth? I coldly responded, you do not bet on a liar. Janet, you possess a compelling case. Inform me that you deceived men, and that Steve was involved. Only another casualty. How many men have? Have you prepared a list for yourself? Are they all homicidal or something? Are there any other individuals awaiting? Place a bullet in my forehead between you. And that incompetent physician is absent. Significant attachment to my heart that would constitute a minuscule target. Tom, I assure you that Steve was the individual responsible. To be candid, you apprehended us immediately. During our time together, I was unaware of his was so miserly that he physically urinated the bed when you extracted the firearm from the drawer when placed on the floor. Seized it with utmost speed. A loaded firearm to a man who is apprehensive to death is not the most intelligent choice you. Janet could have performed better. I apologize. I did not see a manual outlining procedures to follow when you discover your wife engaging in leisure activities with another individual. A man was in your bed, and I was uncertain how to respond. Why did it not occur to us to engage in discussion? You should have considered this possibility earlier. It was evident that you were unfaithful. Were you strategizing when I apprehended you? Demanded vehemently. In truth, I never. I anticipated its occurrence, although if there exists. In the future, please feel free to contact me directly. Janet said that it would be significantly improved than enduring this ordeal alone. Parents and children lack respect for myself, and the sole man I adore harbors an utter disdain for me. I nearly received. You sustained a gunshot wound to the head. I have been kinder than I deserve to be. I am aware of the suffering. There was a period of stillness. At that moment, I believe none of us comprehended the impact it made on Janet's life. The prospect of reverting to a living hell provided me with significant enjoyment. I believe there is little else to. I have finally broken the quiet to engage in discussion here. I am initiating divorce proceedings against you. Janet, I possess a selection regarding words and obtain a competent attorney due to my circumstances. I must hold you accountable. Engage in this to maintain a degree of self-respect. The lawyer will contact the children. Selected several apartments for me to examine our initial meeting scheduled for a. In a matter of minutes, you shattered my heart, Janet. Even the physicians were unable to rectify it. Janet merely inclined her head in farewell. She wept as her parents accompanied the children. Me to the door in silence. It was exceedingly frustrating, amusing how events transpire if I had not been shot in. I sustained a head injury and was transported to the hospital. Likely would have perished within a few weeks, if not fewer. That is what the medical professionals informed me. That I was fortunate that Janet selected that moment in our marriage to betray me is likely. Saved my life, yet it was quite difficult for me to perceive it as everything, even the most unfavorable outcome that had ever occurred to me. Fortunately, I possessed a commendable employment position and excellent insurance coverage. Janet commenced employment following the children's departure. Departed from home, she was employed part-time at a department shop and failed to bring home the substantial sum my solicitor proposed to Janet. Completely unjust legal counsel. Unpleasant agreement we were compelled to initiate at a location and could consistently engage in negotiations. I was astonished when my attorney informed me Janet had consented to it despite objections. Her lawyer advised against it. We possessed a mortgage regarding a residence she would never attain. I was receiving the majority of the savings, and equity she received were none. Alimony would render it impossible for her to endure. I was certain of it, and then another fortunate event entered my life. Similar to the films, I purchased a lottery ticket. Winning ticket was valued at several $1 million, and I was instantly apprehensive that Janet might obtain a portion of it, so I refrained from informing anyone. Regarding the earnings, I transported it in my wallet, and frequently when I was solitary, I would extract it and manipulate it. Preoccupying thoughts regarding him and what he was able to purchase for my loneliness intensified over time, augmented, and the enjoyment I derived from possessing the winning ticket weakened me. Having already accumulated all the funds I required, particularly as I would shortly be as a bachelor, why was I so discontented? Becoming increasingly wretched, it undoubtedly. It was not financial issues. I took a week's vacation and engaged in fishing on the. I spent nearly all my time on the Delaware River. Increased fishing activity during daylight hours on the river. I was fishing and contemplating. After dusk, I would consume beer and consider that by the conclusion of the week. Ultimately, I had formulated a course of action. Janet's parents consented to meet me at my apartment on Sunday evening. They were bound by confidentiality and prohibited from disclosing to others that I had extended an invitation to them. I have a request regarding the bill. Contact my father-in-law if you are unable. Kindly fulfill my request by maintaining the. I am about to disclose information. Profoundly concealed secret. I believe I can concur with that, Tom, unless it pertains to something else. I believe it is imperative to expose this to save a life. I purchased something that Bill added. Purchased a lotto ticket a few months prior and he won a bill that pays out slightly over $4 million if you accept an annuity that is advantageous for you, Tom. Congratulations. What do you require from us? Are you requesting that we refrain from informing Janet? Regarding this, a suddenly disheartened Bill inquired whether Bill should ensure she never discovers the truth. I purchased that ticket. Tom insisted that you are placing us in a challenging circumstance. You can observe that. Can't you, Doris? My mother-in-law inquired. Not exactly, Doris. I would like you to convey. Janet, you purchased the ticket I desire. You must allocate it between Janet and the each child receiving 1/3, however. Do not disclose to anyone that I purchased the ticket. That will not elicit inquiries. The ticket for your sole offspring, and it is quite lawful for grandchildren. It will assist the youngsters and preserve Janet's life. Doris was weeping profusely. Bill cleared his throat and gazed out the window. It did not require a really perceptive individual to understand that they were genuinely moved by my. I felt better than I had ever experienced since the day I returned home early. In the morning, I discovered Janet in bed with that. It was precisely what I required to ultimately commence the emotional. We willingly support your recuperation. Tom. Bill, with a sneer, remarked, you are aware of Janet. Remains indoors and has commenced employment. Extended hours to fulfill the mortgage obligation. Timely payment is crucial for her satisfaction. __. She recognizes her significant error. Because it is not due to the. Bill has never been inclined to be. He dedicated 25 years as a firefighter in New York City and contacted. Designate items by their accurate nomenclature. The daughter's behavior caused distress to him and Doris, almost as much as it pained me for a week. Subsequently, I received the most peculiar news conceivable from my attorney, my insanity. Shortly, Tobe's estranged wife consulted her attorney to establish contact with me, alerting him that she possessed additional income to report and that I had a right to half of what was unfair. What type of lawyer does she have? I informed him to inform her inept attorney that I would not accept any portion and that she may retain all matters pertaining to the divorce hearing on which we never reached an agreement. Allocation of the lottery funds. Both parties remained inflexible in their positions. My attorney informed me that I should withdraw my case because I was damaging his image as a barracuda. He smiled upon the judge's remark of this. He expressed his astonishment at that time. He performed an action I anticipated. He consistently declined to grant the request. I do not believe anyone in this divorce. The case would benefit from state intervention. Upon receiving the suit, he commenced, I have never witnessed both perspectives in a divorce dispute. This issue about money prompts me to rethink the necessity for a divorce, possibly therapy or merely an open discourse among the parties would assist in resolving this issue. Instructed our attorneys to continue working on and to reassess in 1 month. He urged Janet and me to engage in discussions. I departed the courtroom at the earliest opportunity. Thoroughly perplexed, Janet's parents attended the hearing and Bill approached. I am in the parking lot, Tom. I am requesting your attention. As a courtesy, please visit your residence immediately. We will each have a sandwich, consume beer and attempt to resolve issues. Two of the most obstinate individuals I have. He reprimanded her for leaving without ever seeing him. While awaiting my reaction, Janet opened the. Upon ringing the bell, she glanced at the door. Pale, however otherwise in good health, she scarcely met my gaze as she pivoted and guided. I entered the kitchen where her family had left it cold. Incisions and all necessary components for fabrication. Sandwiches we could consume in a week. Bill presented me with a cold. Tom, I am the individual responsible for creating this entire project. I wish to address my parents first. Purchased the victorious lottery ticket and provided it to me and the children for division. Are already aware of your entitlement to 50% of my allocation, as we were indeed remain married while the children and I submitted it. Janet highlighted that I possess a self-serving motive for desiring your acquisition. It will assist me in forgiving myself for I made a grievous error towards you. I understand that you are unable to forgive me, but I was unable to do so myself. I cannot forgive myself either, and that is quite difficult. Really, it is painful. It is not about the financial aspect, Tom. Regarding my recent accomplishment, and just to you merit superior treatment then. I request that you accept the money. I consent to the divorce you will initiate. Bill and Doris observed me without charge. I am attentively awaiting my response. I contemplated the subject for an extended period. Do not believe that money should possess any significance. What is the relationship between self-forgiveness and you, Janet? Your actions were unacceptable, but we have reached a conclusion. If you would simply accept the funds and I will consent to the terms of the divorce. Achieve closure if it is beneficial. I extend my forgiveness to you. Required considerable time and multiple mugs of. I have forgiven you over the beer. I wish things had been otherwise. It never occurred, yet we cannot alter the. In the past, I loved you, Janet. I still do, but I cannot trust you, so I cannot get into marriage with you. I do not wish for you to lose your residence. More others endure hardship due to my actions. I am not particularly proud to acknowledge that the remainder of the arrangement is significantly advantageous to me, hence. Simply accept the funds provided by your parents. I will not comply, Tom. I shall contest this to the Supreme Court if I. Janet stated with a degree of emotion, we must. For heaven's sake, Bill said in astonishment. All others, this is quite lamentable. Cannot tolerate it. Janet made an error and heartbreak has rendered you unable to remain, Bill. Married to an unfaithful partner, and that is precisely what she requires is some assistance. Absolution or a similar concept prior to her actions. Does consenting to a divorce make sense? Bill persisted while Janet and I acquiesced. Uncomplainingly, here is my. Consider this idea with due discernment. Janet, grant the unfortunate individual a divorce. Maintaining the dignity he rightfully deserves is crucial. You, Tom, return after the divorce. Execute Janet with a firearm. It is imperative that you treat her with respect. If you desire, I am indifferent. She requires assistance. You are responsible for her well-being and you remain infatuated with that foolish individual. You will not be capable of trusting her for a while, if at all. It is evident, Janet, that this man is foolish. Sufficient to cohabit with you and rest. Do you consent to be with your __cow? Loyal to him and also concur that he may resort to extremely severe methods. To maintain your integrity, you are the type of woman who appears to require the intimidation of a decisive control exerted appropriately. Position, Dad. I will do anything to persuade Tom. Relocate to my residence. I assure you, Tom. You will never have cause for regret, Janet declared. Ardently, that was the extent of Bill's unfulfilled existence. The concept of a resolution to my predicament was present. I would obtain my divorce and my self-respect would restore Janet, possess a primary earner and an opportunity to validate my assertion. I was aware it was a complete concept you would need to. It would be irrational to accept Bill's proposal. I smiled and extended my hand to Bill as Janet entered abruptly. Lamentation 4.